Jerome Clark's Unexplained, 347 strange sightings, incredible occurrences, and puzzling physical phenomena. Catching the Dover Demon. The scare began at 10:30 on the evening of April 21st, 1977, as three 17-year-old boys were driving north through Dover, Massachusetts, Boston's most affluent suburb. One of them, Bill Bartlett, thought he spotted something creeping along a low wall of loose stones on the left side of the road. As the figure turned its head and stared into the headlights of the car, Bartlett said he saw two large, round, glassy, lidless eyes shining brightly like orange marbles. Its head, resting atop a thin neck, was big and watermelon-shaped and fully as large as the rest of the body. Except for its oversized head, the creature was thin with long, spindly arms and legs and large hands and feet. The skin was hairless and peach-colored and appeared to have a rough, sandpaper-like texture. No more than 4 feet tall, it had been making its way uncertainly along the wall, its long fingers curled around the rocks, when the car's lights surprised it. Neither of Bartlett's companions, whose attention was elsewhere, noticed the creature, which was visible for only a few seconds. They testified later, however, that their friend had seemed genuinely upset. When Bartlett arrived at his home, his father noticed his distraught state and heard the story from his son, who drew a sketch of what he had seen. Around 12:30 a.m., 15-year-old John Baxter, walking home from his girlfriend's house, reportedly saw a short figure approaching him. Thinking it was a small-statured friend, he called out his name but got no response. When the figure got closer, it stopped, causing Baxter to do the same. Trying to get a better look, Baxter took one step forward, and the figure scurried off to the left, running down a shallow wooded gully and up the opposite bank. Baxter followed it down the slope, then stopped and looked across the gully. The figure, which looked like nothing he had ever seen or heard of, stood in silhouette about 30 feet away, its feet molded around the top of a rock a few feet from a tree. It was leaning towards the tree and with the long fingers of both hands entwined around the trunk. Though he would claim not to have heard of Bartlett's report at that point, his description of it would be exactly the same. Baxter backed carefully up the slope and walked quickly away from the scene. The next day, Bartlett told his close friend, Will Tainter, age 18, about his experience. That night, while Tainter was driving Abby Brabham, 15, home, Brabham said she spotted something in the car's headlights. On the left side of the road was a hairless creature crouched on all fours, facing the car. Its body was thin and monkey-like, its head large, oblong, and devoid of nose, ears, and mouth. The facial area around the eyes was lighter, and the eyes glowed bright green. Brabham insisted on this last detail, even after investigators informed her that Bartlett had said the eyes were orange. Tainter said he caught only a brief glimpse of the creature. Anomalist Lauren Coleman, then living in the Boston area, learned of Bartlett's report through an acquaintance who knew the teenager. Subsequently, he, along with ufologists Walter N. Webb and Ed Fogg, interviewed Bartlett and the other witnesses, along with their parents, school officials and teachers, and police officers. They uncovered no evidence of a hoax. To the contrary, those who knew the teenagers described them as credible. A local newspaper then dubbed the creature the Dover Demon. According to Charles Berlitz, the demon first appeared at 10:30 on the evening of April 21st on Farm Street. Not long afterward, 15-year-old John Baxter was walking home up Miller's High Road after dropping off his girlfriend, and he also saw the figure at that point. From the magazine Unsolved UFO Sightings and Other Unexplained Mysteries, Fall 1994. This comes on page 58. Some UFO cases are really out of this world. Strange and bizarre encounters of the unknown kind. By Sean Devaney. On April 18, 1961, Joe Simonton, a master plumbing living in Eagle River, Wisconsin, heard a sound like knobby tires on a wet pavement before seeing a silvery object like two wash bowls turned face to face just a few inches off the ground. When he approached the strange object, a 6-foot-high hatch opened and he saw 3 men inside. They appeared young and about 5 feet tall with dark hair and hairless dark faces. One of them handed Simonton a silver-colored jug with 2 handles and indicated with a motion that they wanted water. Simonton filled the jug and handed it back. He then saw a man cooking on some kind of flameless stove. Seeing a stack of small, perforated, cookie-like objects next to the griddle, Simonton motioned that he wanted one. An occupant picked up 4 of the pancakes and gave them to Simonton. The hatch closed and the UFO took off at a 45-degree angle, creating a great rush of wind that bowed over the nearby pine trees. Simonton ate one of the cookies, and he later told investigators that it tasted like cardboard. He kept a second one and gave the remaining 2 to various UFO investigation committees. A group of Northwestern University apparently said that the cookies they tasted were made of flour, sugar, and grease, according to their tests. In a field where weirdness is the norm, the following cases are among the strangest on record. People who have come in contact with UFOs have reported some very peculiar side effects, like being cured of injuries or diseases. Some have received serious radiation burns from being too close to UFOs. Others have reported seeing giant monsters like Mothman or Bigfoot. Where these strange creatures come from is anyone's guess. In one case, during a sighting of a UFO, a group of men came across 2 giant creatures that looked like werewolves. One of the men shot one of the creatures, but apparently the bullet never even hit the monster. The bullet appeared to have passed through the werewolf, and the monster was not harmed. On July 12, 1947, the Philadelphia Evening Bulletin printed the following letter from a reader named Raymond K. Barklow. Nothing else is known about this very unusual case, and anyone who has further information should contact this magazine or this TV program. As an explanation of the current episode of Flying Saucers, I offer the following story of my 5-year-old daughter. At the time of her birth, her doctor reported that he had seen a gleaming silvery object in the sky traveling at a great speed. He attributed the sensation to one of 2 things: an after-image common to everyone, or an electrical phenomenon that could be explained. Several times since, usually near her daughter's birthday, bright objects, round in shape and traveling at great speed, have been seen by members of the immediate family. On these occasions, the cause of the apparition has been explained away as purely psychic. Little weight was attached to the visitation of these circular objects overhead until her first birthday, when her hair began to come in snow white. It has remained white and now gives off a peculiar radium-like glow. Disinterested individuals have called attention to the fact that they have noticed this emanation whenever her birthday approaches. We are willing to submit to questioning or examination of the child's hair in an effort to explain the current outburst of discs that are occurring as her birthday nears. The Scoutmaster case. Aliens and UFOs attacking or otherwise harassing people is not a recent development. One of the first cases of a UFO attacking a human being took place in Florida on the night of August 19, 1952. A scoutmaster named C.S. Desverges was taking 3 Boy Scouts home that night when he noticed a light to his left when he was driving along a deserted road. He slowed down and asked the boys if they had seen it. None of them had. According to Edward Ruppelt in his classic book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, he started to drive on when he saw the lights again. This time all of the boys saw them too, so they stopped. He said he wanted to go back into the woods to see what was happening. He told Edward Ruppelt later that he thought that the lights looked like an airplane crashing into the woods some distance away. A 15-minute radio program had just started, and he told the frightened boys that he was going into the woods and that if it wasn't back by the time the program had ended, they should run down the road to a farmhouse that they had passed and get help. He got out and started directly into the woods, wearing a faded blue denim build cap, and carried a machete and 2 flashlights. One of the flashlights was a spare he carried in his back pocket. He had traveled about 50 yards into the dense woods when he ran into a palmetto thicket, so he stopped and looked for a clear path. He found none, and he began pushing his way through the waist-high tangle of brush. When he had stopped, he became aware of a sharp and pungent odor. It was very faint, actually more like a subconscious awareness at first, he told Ruppelt and the other investigators. He also noticed that the air temperature had risen. He pushed on. About 30 yards more, he came across another clearing. Both the odor and the heat had become stronger. In fact, he told the investigators that the heat became almost unbearable, or as he put it, oppressively moist, making it hard to breathe. The Boy Scouts in the car had been watching the Scoutmaster's progress through the woods by watching his flashlight bobbing around. Occasionally, he would shine the light up a tree or across the landscape for an instant, so they knew where he was in relation to the trees and thickets. They saw him stop at the edge of the clearing and shine his light ahead of him. At the edge of the clearing, he walked a few more paces and stopped. Suddenly, he had the horrible feeling that someone was watching him. He took another step, stopped, and looked up to find the North Star, or any stars. Then he suddenly saw that almost the entire sky was blanked out by a large, dark shape about 30 feet above him. He said he had stood in this position for several seconds or minutes. He didn't know how long, because now the feeling of being watched and overcome any power of reasoning that he had. He managed to get and back up a few paces, and he apparently got out from underneath the object because he could now see the edge of it silhouetted against the black sky. As he backed up, he said the air became much cooler and fresher, helping him to think more clearly. He shone the flashlight up at the edge of the object and got a quick but good look. It was circular-shaped and slightly concave on the bottom. The surface was smooth and a grayish color. The upper part had a dome in the middle like a turret. The edge of the saucer was thick and had veins spaced about every foot, like buckets on a turbine wheel. Between each vein was a small opening like a nozzle. The next reaction that the Scoutmaster recalled was one of fury. He wanted to harm or destroy whatever it was that he saw. All he had was a machete, but he wanted to try to jump up and strike at whatever he was looking at. No sooner did he get this idea that he noticed the shadows on the turret change ever so slightly, and he heard a sound, like the opening of a well-oiled safe door. He froze where he stood and noticed a small ball of red flame drifting toward him. As it floated down, it expanded into a cloud of red mist. He dropped his machete and flashlight and put his arms over his face. As the mist enveloped him, he passed out. The Boy Scouts in the car estimated that their Scoutmaster had been gone about 5 minutes when they saw him stop at the edge of the clearing, then walk on in. They saw him stop seconds later, hesitate a few more seconds, then shine the light up in the air. They thought he was just looking up at the trees again. The next thing they said they saw was a big red ball of fire engulfing them. They saw him fall, so they spilled out of the car and took off down the road for the farmhouse. The Scoutmaster had no idea of how long he was unconscious. He vaguely remembered leaning up against a tree, the feeling of wet, dew-covered grass, and suddenly regaining consciousness. His first reaction was to get out onto the highway, so he started to run. About halfway through the palmetto thicket, he saw a car stop on the highway. He ran towards it and found a deputy and constable with the boys. Later, he discovered that his face and arms and his cap had been burned. When he and the two officers went back to check out the area where he had fallen, they found the flashlight he had dropped still burning. They found crushed grass where he lay on the ground, but the spare flashlight he had carried in his back pocket was gone, and it was never found. Soil and grass samples from where the UFO had hovered over were sent to a laboratory in Washington, D.C. The cap was sent as well. The holes in the cap were caused by an electric spark. The roots of the grass samples were discovered to be charred. The Air Force concluded that the entire incident was a hoax, but they could not explain how the roots of the grass were charred. This is called a world of shadows. Another, even more bizarre case involving aliens and UFOs attacking people took place on July 22nd, 1978, and it's described in Timothy Green Beckley's Strange Encounters. Mickey Eckert and Kathy Eckard were driving on Interstate 80 East on the Utah-Wyoming border. They were headed toward Nebraska when they saw what appeared to be an accident on the side of the road. We turned to get a better look and saw these white lights bobbing up and down. In order to get a better look, we pulled over to the shoulder of the road and aimed our car headlights in the direction of the crash. The sun had just set as they drove on a desolate and very isolated stretch of road nearly 80 miles north of Wheelock, Nebraska. Our spotlights were trained on what we thought to be a mishap, but all we could see was 3 round circles hovering a few feet above the ground. In front of our eyes, these lights turned into 2 sports cars that were coming towards us. We wanted no part of what was happening, so we took off in the opposite direction. As we turned the car around to leave, in back of us we saw this whole bunch of lights. We backed up on the interstate, and now there were 2 trucks that appeared out of thin air. On the trucks were teeny little lights. The trucks were following us. Of this I'm sure. The 2 tractor-trailers kept a steady pace on the highway behind them. It was as if unseen eyes were watching their every movement. For some reason, Kathy asked me to stop, and she got out of the car and stood in front of it. It was then that we all saw these other cars parked along the side of the road. They were just stopped there. When Kathy got back into our vehicle, she wanted to drive, and so I let her take the steering wheel. To her, it felt as if something, some force, were trying to take control of our car. She got scared and eventually turned the driving back over to me, and I too felt this strange pulling. Putting as many miles behind them as possible, the 2 girls sped on through the night, anxious to get back to their home in California. As we were passing through Salt Lake City, we stopped off at a Safeway store to get some gum and cigarettes. As we were about to leave the Safeway supermarket, I noticed a reflection on one of the large windows coming from either inside or outside. Initially, I just assumed the reflection was caused by either the store lights themselves or from some street light nearby. Out in the parking area, I discovered this was not at all the case, for directly across the lot was this little light about the size of a basketball just sitting near the ground. The 2 women were anxious to press on. As we entered Wyoming, we stopped again to get some bottled water. We were in a pretty good-sized town called Evansville, and it was still pretty early, but there wasn't a light in the entire city. Everything was closed. None of the houses had lights on either. I looked out the window on the driver's side of the car, and there were these 2 ships hanging there. One was orange, the other yellowish white. We continued on toward Green River, and the objects passed through the trees on the other side of the road. At this juncture in time, we lost control of the car once more. No matter how fast we put our foot on the gas pedal, the car refused to accelerate past a certain speed. In the middle of nowhere, the car died completely. With this, a light came into the auto, passing right through an open window. The light touched Kathy Eckard, and for no explainable reason, Mickey began talking to the light. "Come on, little light, why don't you touch me too?" she said, despite the fact that everything up to this point had frightened her. No sooner than the light appeared inside the car, it disappeared. All of a sudden, we didn't see the ships anymore, but we started seeing trucks, Northwestern, American, and other big-name rigs. They were traveling in both directions up and down the highway. The only way I can describe it is as a caravan of big lights going back and forth. This one particular truck stopped directly in front of us, and we knew that something was wrong. It was freaky. The trucks were now ships, dome-shaped, 3-sided ships about the same size as a compact automobile, and they were no longer on the road, but traveling about 6 feet off the ground. Mickey told veteran researcher Timothy Green Beckley, who listened to this bizarre story during a privately sponsored UFO conference that was held in San Diego, that she was, by this time, too bewildered to be an excellent observer. She finds it hard to estimate the number of trucks or dome-shaped ships, but she does know that the car they were in got pushed forward about 20 feet, as if it had been lifted up by some terrific force from underneath. Despite their pounding hearts, the girls decided to get out of their car and have a look, to see if anything might have gotten caught underneath their wheels, which might account for the sudden tug forward. There was nothing there that would offer a solution to the puzzle, and so they climbed back into the relative safety of their vehicle. Soon there was this other car that pulled up directly in back of us, and Kathy said she wanted to get out and see who was driving it. It was quite apparent from Mickey's comments that the girls were anxious to seek help from any other people they might find driving so late at night. When Kathy got back into the car, I was anxious to know what she had said to the individuals in the car behind me. She just looked at me straight in the eye and said, "Turn around and tell me what you would have said to them." There was this big black dog with a tail curled up and 2 red eyes blazing just outside our car door. Crawling in fear, Mickey happened to glance into the rearview mirror. What she saw only added fuel to a fire of panic that was so near to bursting out of control within them. I saw what appeared to be a kid with his arms bunched together on the back seat. The girls jumped out of the car in an attempt to get away from whatever they saw. Fortunately, the dog-like creature was nowhere in sight. However, directly behind them were 2 bright lights, which were joined by several other duller-looking lights. After several minutes, they all blended into one light. As the light went past us, it was no longer just a light, but a ship. We heard this rumbling sound, and our hair stood on end. Our skin was covered with goosebumps. At this point, it seemed as if Mickey and Kathy had been transported to another dimension, another sphere of reality, for all at once things started looking peculiar, totally out of whack.
Then the sun started to come up, but it was only an orange ball and it was coming toward us. And then it wasn't orange anymore, but its color turned suddenly to gray. And it was about 100 feet across, just enormous. And people started to appear out of nowhere, walking across the freeway, carrying tubes and pipes. We didn't actually see them come out of any ship because the sun, or whatever it was, had landed in the valley out of our immediate viewing range. The beings, or whatever they were standing in the middle island that separates the north and southbound traffic. There were these bunch of blue lights, and we knew that something was going to happen. We were terrified. We felt like we were going to be taken to another planet and never be heard from again. Without warning, the car started up. I got mad at Kathy because I thought she had slammed on the brakes, and I hit my head on the dashboard. We saw the ship coming down the interstate, and we also saw an 18-wheeler pickup truck towing one of the sports cars we had seen earlier in the evening. Something pushed us from behind, but we couldn't get the car to run on its own accord. From out of nowhere, a man appeared and asked the girls where they were headed. He said he was going to Chicago, and we said that's where we were going too. I'd have gone to Timbuktu just to get out of the spot we were in. From what Beckley was able to gather, the man did not seem to realize anything unusual was happening. He seemed totally unaware of the frightful state of the girls' minds caused by a terror that was real enough to them, even if nobody else was able to perceive what was transpiring around them. I was so scared that I crawled over the driver. He stopped at a truck stop to get some coffee, and we got out and walked to a nearby motel. We didn't have much money, but we had about $35, so we got a room. We unlocked the door and turned on the light, and the TV went on by itself. Also, this teeny little light flittered around the room, and we knew we hadn't escaped. Realizing they were being observed, the girls tried to intimidate the light that was buzzing around their room. Kathy, did you mail that letter telling about the flight pattern of the UFOs to my lawyer? I asked with a purposeful slowness. She said she had, playing along with the game. We called the police, and finally at 5 o'clock the next afternoon, they came and took us back to the spot where we had abandoned our vehicle. As it turned out, the car wasn't where we had left it. And when we went back to the valley where the ship had been, the area wasn't the same. There was no little road on the side of the road. The freeway railing wasn't even the same. There was a sign, Mountain Road 189. There is no Mountain Road 189 in all of Wyoming. We had a full tank of gas, and we were about 250 miles into the state, and there wasn't a gas station anywhere. It was like they had been driving without consuming fuel. In a nearby field, the corpses of a cow and a sheep were discovered. The cow was all bones, and the sheep had all of its skin peeled back, which made it look like a blanket lying there. Mickey told Beckley that the police made them fill out a complete report. After they had finished hearing our entire story, they shrugged and told us we'd seen swamp gas. She told Beckley that both her life and her friends had been drastically altered because of the events of that night. Kathy is only 31 years old, but she's been in the hospital at least 20 times since this has happened. And now we're going to change the pace a bit, and we're going to an article from the New York Times Science Tuesday. Legendary giant sloth sought by scientists in Amazon rainforest, by Malcolm W. Brown. An American biologist and a team of scientists, technicians, and Indian guides are preparing to penetrate the trackless rainforest of western Brazil in pursuit of a South American counterpart of the fabled Himalayan Yeti. The object of this quest, headed by Dr. David C. Oren, an American ornithologist employed by the Brazilian government, is an animal Dr. Oren believes to be a human-sized ground sloth belonging to a family thought by paleontologists to be long extinct. Accounts by Indians of the Amazon region describe the elusive animal as terrifying and dangerous, physically powerful and equipped with some kind of chemical defense capable of paralyzing opponents. Dr. Oren, a staff scientist at the Goldie Natural History Museum in Belém, Brazil, said by telephone that he had conducted more than 100 interviews in the last 9 years with Indians and rubber tappers who told of having had contacts with the creature. Dr. Oren acknowledges that he has had trouble persuading other scientists of the possibility that the creature is anything more than a local myth. Among the American biologists he has sought to interest in the search is Dr. Malcolm C. McKenna, a paleontologist at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. Dr. McKenna is dubious. While there is always a chance of discovering some previously unknown large animal somewhere in the world, just as it is possible to discover some new island in the middle of an ocean, said Dr. McKenna, the likelihood is too small to draw me away from my work here. You just can't go chasing each rumor of a Sasquatch or Yeti. On the other hand, discoveries of large new animals have sometimes surprised scientists. A large ungulate in post-war Vietnam, the okapi, discovered in Africa in 1900, a new peccary in the South American Chaco region believed to be extinct since the Pleistocene epoch. You never know, but Dr. McKenna said it would take more than word-of-mouth accounts to convince scientists of the reality of a ground sloth living in the Amazon basin. I think scientists will insist on seeing at least a chunk of it, he said. Even a photograph won't do. Dr. Oren agrees that to convince the skeptics, he would have to bring the creature back dead or alive. We'll be bringing tranquilizing dart guns, he says, although it may be difficult to use them effectively. Most Indian accounts of the creature describe it as having an extremely tough skin that cannot be easily penetrated. That description tallies with fossil remains of a family of extinct ground sloths known as the mylodontids. These animals had dermal ossicles, body armor, plating embedded in the skin. Reports have long circulated about a Mapinguari, a legendary and terrifying man-like creature of the vast Amazon rainforest. But when scientists took an interest at all, Dr. Oren said they tended to guess that the animal, if it existed, might be some kind of primate. But when I began hearing accounts of a creature with shaggy red hair, backward-turned feet, and a monkey-like face, I realized that witnesses might have encountered a ground sloth, closely related to extinct giant sloths known only from their fossils. 3 families of sloths are known. In only 2 genuses, both of them tree dwellers, are known to have survived to the present day, Dr. Oren said. The common 3-toed sloth is a lethargic creature that seems to live in slow motion and is considered a family member of the megatherids, mostly known from fossils. The much rarer modern 2-toed sloth, a surviving member of the megalonachid family, is less slothful, Dr. Oren said, and can move swiftly and forcefully if threatened. The 3rd family of sloths, the extinct ground-dwelling mylodontids, grew to the size of large bears and were apparently very active. The Mapinguari, as Indians call the supposed forest creature, is apparently smaller than fossil members of the family, standing only about 6 feet tall when walking on its hind feet, but weighing about 500 pounds when with jaws and feet powerful enough to rip palm trees apart. The creature is said to subsist largely on palm hearts and other vegetable delicacies of the rainforest. The Mapinguari is also described as having a thunderous voice that can sound quite human, and that it has deceived human visitors to its habitat into thinking that another human was nearby. Agreement on appearance. Purported sightings of the creatures over a wide area generally agree on its appearance, Dr. Oren said, including descriptions of a ridge of mane-like fur along the animal's neck and back. The Indians are very frightened of it, but some of them are anxious to capture one to prove to outsiders that it exists, Dr. Oren said. 10 of these Indians will accompany our expedition. Provided Dr. Oren and his group can obtain necessary government permits in time, they hope to set out during the first week of March and expect to remain in the rainforest for about a month. To reach the interior of the state of Acre, near the point where the frontiers of Brazil meet those of Peru and Bolivia, one of the regions where sightings have been reported most, the group will then travel to an Indian village, then upriver by boat, and then by foot at least 2 days' march into the trackless forest. The creature is apparently never sighted along waterways where there is human habitation, but only in the depths of the forest. A major motive for the search, Dr. Oren said, is to demonstrate that a large number of species in the Amazon basin remain unknown to science, but are nevertheless worthy of protection and conservation. My whole reason for being in the Amazon as a scientist, Dr. Oren said, is to survey its enormous variety of species. If this ground sloth exists, it may be the largest land mammal in South America, and yet it is still unknown to science. If we can find it, we will have proof that there are vast biological niches that are still awaiting discovery. Well, that concludes our program tonight, our Omnibus Unlimited potpourri of stories. We got first a story of the Dover Demon, and then we moved into some strange UFO encounters where a man ate alien cookies, another car that went into a different dimension of UFObia, and finally a scoutmaster who was abducted by a UFO after he raised his sword to it, and then we looked at the ground sloth. Well, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. The show is presented in radiovision, whereby the backdrop is completely independent of the audio track being recorded at a separate time. We hope you enjoyed Omnibus Unlimited. The show is a chalkboard for the revisionist. It's chewing gum for the mind. The subjects that aren't mainstream, but nonetheless need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed now. I'm John Horrigan. Take care.